Welcome, Stephen. I really appreciate you joining me on this podcast and learning a bit more about you and your business. So for people who haven't come across it before, what is Entrepreneur Business School and who's it designed to help?
Yeah, thanks, Dad. Entrepreneurial Business School, it's actually a 20-year-old, 21 years old now, coaching organization. They operate across Australia, the UK and New Zealand, a bit of the US as well. The work we do is with business owners, helping transform, themselves just from being maybe a business manager where they're deeply invested in the business all their time as well, and trying to elevate them to more of what we call an owner status where they don't have to be so heavily invested. They have team and people and systems where that enables them to work on the business, not in the business. So just helping them be better business owners, more successful, and have their businesses perform in the way they hoped they would when they first started them.
Yeah, I know. I think you've mentioned this before, but this isn't something that most people learn. They kind of decide they want to run a business first rather than deciding to learn how to run a business first.
Right. Yeah. I talk about, if you want to be a doctor, it'll take you, 7 years or so to be qualified as a doctor. If you want to be a fully qualified tradesperson, that will take you, 3 or 4 years of vocational training. If you want to be a business owner, it'll take you about 2 minutes just to go online, register, and voila, you're a business owner. So,
Yes.
there's challenges there that business owners have around some of the competencies that are required in a business that they just haven't been given. They just don't have some of those skills and areas that they're aware of to work in.
And what would you say are the biggest challenges that those business owners and entrepreneurs face, especially when they're first starting their business?
Right. Yeah. Look, normally a business owner will start a business in an area that they're very familiar with. So a good electrician starts an electrical business, and a good chef might open a restaurant. But there's just a lot of challenges along the way around. I mean, a big one is financial literacy. Huge, requirement there. You can't just rely on your accountant to know the numbers within the business. When you start hiring team, understanding, how you advertise, hire, onboard, performance manage team members. And as your business gets bigger, the leadership principles, instilling, a culture in a business, and how, what the rules of the game are and how people should perform and not perform. And then things like sales, marketing, systems, processes that people just might not be aware of. So they're huge challenges when people first start out. They underestimate the importance of some of those areas.
And as you say, it's kind of, you can be passionate about something and kind of excited to do it, and you might have had some success on your own. But when you start that business and you realize, I can't spend all my time doing the thing I love. I've got to do the sales. I've got to do the hiring. I've got to do the accounts. All of a sudden you're wearing multiple hats and you're not doing what you're good at. And in actual fact, you're probably doing what you're not very good at. And then there's no one to help. So like you say, it's a big jump for a lot of people. I'd be curious, what do you think is the kind of common mistake that founders make at that early stage of their business?
Right. Well, it's not only the early stages, right? It can be in more established businesses as well. But certainly in those early days, we talk about a thing called a dumb tax. So, dumb taxes are, decisions you've made that have then cost you time or money. So, passion is not the holy grail when it comes to running a business. If it was, they'd all be successful because every business owner is passionate about what they do. And unfortunately, it's about 80% of new businesses won't make the 10-year mark. And even if they do, they rarely get to the level of income that they were expecting to get from a business. I was reading some statistics the other day that I think it's 42% of businesses fail simply because there's not a big enough available market in the area they operate in. So someone's very passionate about wanting to start a business to do something, but maybe the market just isn't there and they haven't really looked into that thing. So market analysis and understanding some of those things is pretty important. And then there's areas, you've got to be data driven. Everything's data driven now. There's so much data out there in everything that we do, and it's understanding the, we talk a lot about KPIs. People don't like KPIs, or a lot of people don't like KPIs, but they're so important as to what are the KPIs in a business, what are the things that need to be tracked, what are the areas to look in, and some founders aren't looking at the right dials in. We talk about a business cockpit. So what are the dials in the cockpit that aren't being looked at, that are giving some of those critical feedbacks and data that you need to really get the business cranking?
And it's funny because you say about sort of there not being a big enough, basically not enough customers to support the business. And you would have thought like it's weird because I would have thought, yeah, obviously in a business plan kind of thing, you're forced to go like, do you think you can actually find enough customers? But I also know that you can get so excited that you go, yeah, I'll be fine. There's billions of people in the world. I'll find them. Do you know what it's so?
Right. Yes.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because you kind of go, surely that was obvious, but then it totally isn't, because as you said, the passion is there.
Right. Yes.
So if someone has an idea for a business and they come to you, how do you help them avoid that and turn it into actually something practical, actually viable?
Yeah, helping them avoid those dumb taxes, and certainly for older people who don't have time to recover from those dumb taxes. I always talk about, if you lose money, you can make more to replace it, but when you lose time, it's gone forever. So we're going to be really careful how we spend our time and our money. So a lot of the work I do in the early stages with businesses is around, what is the plan? You even sit with someone and ask about what's the actual plan. We know where the business is right now, but how does that compare to where they thought it would be at this point in time? Where are they actually trying to get to? And it's surprising the number of business owners or founders who don't really know. So what I'll do is we'll put that plan in place to understand, right, well, if we're at this level of revenue or profitability right now, where does that need to be in 1 year's time, in 2 years' time? What's the time frame? How much risk do you want to take in between that? How much investment do you want to put into that time? And then once you've got that, let's say that 1 year plan, breaking that down into 90-day plans, into manageable chunks, and just understanding the capacity of the business. There's lots of people who even are very, focused on wanting to achieve a certain level. I was having a conversation only yesterday with someone, and they were talking about, within a year, they want to double the business without really much consideration to the team that would take to achieve that. They hadn't then thought about, well, actually, because of the levels of utilization in the business with the team and what the people were doing, it was a services business. To achieve that growth would be significant investment in people, which they hadn't really considered. So there's just these blind spots that some founders and business owners have that, they're the things that I'll do and go in, as a coach, to look across the business to understand the capacity of the business, of the person, of the owner, the founder, and to make sure that we're doing things in a sustainable way. We can get quick growth, but you need something that's sustainable. So we need to get on that journey and understand what are the expectations of the owner, and how can we help them get there faster than maybe they can do it on their own.
And I guess what would you say would be the key things that they need to focus on if they are trying to grow?
Cash is one of the huge ones. So
it's the king, isn't it, really?
Well, I say revenue is, everybody talks about revenue. Whenever you talk to an owner, even in conversation with other people, and you go to networking events and other things, and people will talk about, I'm this level of revenue, I'm this size of business. Actually, revenue is vanity. I say profit is sanity, and then cash is king. So the biggest reason, as you'll know, the biggest reason businesses go out of business is cash. It's cash flow. So when we talk about doing forecasting, business forecasting and activity forecasting, we even want people to do cash flow forecasting, because it's so critical an area. And when I go out doing the initial workshops and discussions with owners and founders, and there's these 9 dials I've talked about in your business cockpit. The last 3 are actually on the balance sheet. They're things like receivables and account payables and inventory, which are areas that can impact your cash flow significantly, and you can make, big changes, big positive changes in your business without hitting the top line, just by focusing on those bottom line things of, well, let's collect our money faster, let's pay our bills a little bit more slowly in terms of the payable side, and if you're an inventory heavy business, let's hold as little inventory as we can. Otherwise, it's money just tied up, sitting in a warehouse or a shop or somewhere where that money could be better spent elsewhere.
I guess there's probably an element of resistance. People are they know what you're prescribing they need to do, but it's hard to break old habits, isn't it?
It is, and it's what's great dealing with small to medium business and micro businesses. These are family businesses quite often, so you're dealing with people, often relations, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, fathers, sons, daughters, and things have always been done a certain way. So, and there's an example of it's a 30-year-old business doing cabinet makers and kitchen installations. 31-year-old business. The father was handing it down to the son. They were actually really struggling, though, on the verge of insolvency. And when we went in and started to look at what they're doing, there were lots of challenges they had, but sales process was one of them, and we worked in that area. And we said, look, probably wouldn't work with them because the level of the financial state, how close they were to insolvency. We probably wouldn't normally work with a business that was that close to that, being in that much trouble. But the father was actually quite sick. There was a terminal illness, and he wanted to hand things off to the son. So we stepped in to help. And I mean, within 4 months, we achieved a significant sales week, which was the largest sales week they'd had in the 30 years of trading. So even in mature businesses, there's changes that can be made, but yeah, you've got to get through the pushback and resistance sometimes of the owner, who, again, it's just they won't understand some of the things. We might ask them to spend money in a certain area rather than somewhere else, or not spend it at all on some areas. But they're smart people, but they just need some help. And just need to be a better version of themselves and a better version of the business that they're trying to run.
And I'd imagine, almost, especially in those family-run businesses, it comes with the sort of it's this thing of, it's hard sometimes to take your family seriously because you've seen every aspect of them. If you're working with your brother or your sister, and you remember that was the annoying person that used to steal your sweets, there's lots of history there, which is emotionally charged. It's very hard to kind of get change. And I'd imagine you being independent of that's probably quite useful, particularly in that kind of handover situation where you're able to objectively go, this is not personal. Like, I'm looking at this going, if we don't do this, there's not going to be a business. So I'd imagine that's a great role that you can play in those types of family businesses where sometimes it's entrenched because dad's always said, this is the way we do it, or do as you're told. And even if you're 40, but it's your dad, you're struggling to kind of push back a bit in a way and you can help with that. So I'd imagine that's a really sort of great thing to be able to do.
It is, and the results and the change. I talked earlier about transformation, and transformation's a big word for us in EBS, and it is about transforming, lives in terms of the owners. And there's a lot of relationship counselling goes on. There's a lot of mediation that can happen. And as you just touched on, even if the owner, the parent, has been in there for a long time, times have changed. There's new things. You try and have a conversation with one of our parents about AI and the things it can do. It's going to be a very one-sided conversation, and they'll probably have some negative opinions about some technology that's out there these days. But all these things have a place, and if you don't move with the times, I talked earlier about that percentage of people that fail because maybe the available market's not there. The other thing to look at is competitor analysis. So, it may be that there's just not enough customers because, why open another coffee shop on the street that's got 15 coffee shops already?
Of course, yeah.
But you've just got to understand if there's a niche, if there's something you're doing different, what's your advantage, what's the competition doing? So all of these things go into any business, but yes, certainly in a family-run business, which I come across a lot of, there's some underlying sometimes tensions, or loyalties or things, even in changing positions when you have a leadership team and certain people hold certain positions and it's just not in their wheelhouse, and you probably should look at hiring somebody else and having a change round, and that can get to be a challenging discussion, but it usually works out.
So I'd imagine you'd obviously work with loads of entrepreneurs. What would you say is the difference between those who kind of might struggle and those who succeed? And, so what kind of qualities have you seen over the years that have made you go, look, these people have got a chance of making it really big, or maybe even likewise going, this is going to be tough because I've seen this before and it doesn't end well?
Yeah, we do. I talked about it earlier. Actually, we do a bit of personality profiling. So there's just certain personality types and traits, and people that are harder to work with, people who are more open to change, people who are detail people or more high level people, or things like that. But anybody who's open to learning and open to being coached. Continuous learning is hugely important. I know it's a big one for you. It is for me. Continuous learning is so important. So, the business owners that are successful are the ones that will have an open mind, who will react well to advice and guidance. The ones that are really good, we talk about a thing called the law of constraints, where there's always a constraint in a business, whether that be, let's say, finding work, delivering the work, or getting paid for the work, let's say. And if there's a constraint in delivering work, there's a resource constraint there. You might go as an owner and work on that constraint, but a good owner will understand that there's that constraint there. A great business owner will know that that will lead to another constraint. So once you've got the capacity up, you then need to find more work. So the constraint moves, back to the funnel and finding more leads and doing those sort of things. And when you're really cranking, maybe the constraint moves to, well, suddenly we've got poor cash flow because the receivables aren't being chased. And so great business owners, are on top of where the constraints are in the business and what they need to be focusing on and what's the next thing down the path that they'll need to look at. And another thing, there's a thing called the 1585 rule, which is, if you focus on that first 15% of the time of a project or an activity, that'll make the 85% more successful. So it's all in the planning and preparation. Don't just go charging into a situation, a project, an activity. Actually plan for that. So, lots of great business owners are good with their time. For example, time management's an important one. Someone who can make sure they're spending time working on the business, not in it. So there's a lot of areas there that we talk about. So and the successful ones test and measure a lot. They are data driven. So anything you do, if there's a marketing strategy, for example, is that working? Actually test and measure your marketing strategies. For example, I love when, if I buy something from somebody and then I get asked, how did you find out about us? There's actually a little questionnaire. I love that because they're testing and measuring their marketing. They want to know, was it a newspaper advert? Did they see something on Facebook? Was there something else you saw them? Was it word of mouth? That way you start to know. So testing and measuring is hugely important and understated, and great business owners understand that's something they should do to just collect more data points.
I'm really fascinated. I've talked about it before, about this thing of invisible expertise, of like what you're seeing or what you're looking for compared to what all of us miss. So do you have any other examples of that? Because I love that kind of, as you said, if people are following up, where did you find out about this? Clearly they're measuring something which gives you an indication as to how the business is set up. Yeah. What other telltale signs of kind of successful businesses might we come across?
I touched on it earlier in a session of just in terms of sales process. There'll be a typical sales process that businesses will have, and you can even have a sales process if it's just a person working in a cafe, just serving some coffees and breakfast and things. But so understanding the sales process, things like there was a business we worked with that. The product and service was actually quite expensive, but they would just email the quotes across to the clients. And I said, look, we actually probably need to go and hand deliver these quotes because it's a significant amount of money. There'll be questions asked. It's a big investment rather than just an email being sent. Let's differentiate ourselves and actually go and hand deliver a quote and sit and have a conversation with the with the potential client. And that actually increased the sales conversion rate from something like 2 out of 5 to 4 out of 5 for that particular business that we worked with. Another one I touched on earlier was, and it's something I love, that there's different personalities that we're working with, and some people love a huge amount of detail. If you're in a technology industry, you tend to get lots of engineers and people who like lots of detail and data and those things. But there's other people who might be very high level and don't really care so much. And if a very detailed person is giving a presentation to someone who's not a data person, you'll switch them off straight away. So there's some tactics and things there you can do. So there's a number of blind spots, and that's why it's good to have people to take a step back and just look at what things are working, what things are not, and that extra set of eyes, from a coach, is always incredibly valuable to then give those different insights.
Can you share an example of someone who's maybe worked with you who's had a real breakthrough moment kind of since working with you?
Yeah, probably most recently there's a business down near Southampton I'm working with. It was two school friends actually are running a business together and want to significantly grow the business. Cash flow and profitability was the initial challenge. So as soon as we start coaching anybody, we extract all the data out of QuickBooks or Sage and put it into we have a thing called the financial cockpit. So we take all the data out. And again, like I said, business owners aren't necessarily financially literate and rely on the accountant heavily. So we extract this data and present it in a way that with colors and graphs and ways to make things look, more understandable for the non-finance people that we deal with. So we started to look at the numbers we do this sort of half-day alignment session where we sit and go through where you're trying to get to. Let's map out the first year and see where we are today. And straight away we found there was it was a business they'd acquired and the financial structure was the same as the legacy business. And we found a 70k saving literally within an hour. So there was just money being spent in an area that didn't need to be. There was absolutely zero value in the money being spent where it was. So we pulled that out, straight away. And that 70,000 then obviously it improved cash flow because there was that bill not needing to be paid on a monthly basis. And there was a sales constraint that all of a sudden we had money to go and spend on a salesperson that could go out and start working with some of the clients that they hadn't had time to see. And the other thing was on their marketing. There's a marketing concept or a marketing theory called the 10 by 10 marketing strategies, where it's a theory because it states that 10% of your marketing, each of the 10 will bring 10% of your leads. So Facebook might bring 10% and a billboard might bring 10%. And I say it's a theory because I've never seen a business have 10 strategies. Each one is bringing 10%. So, but these guys had 4 different marketing strategies. And when we went off and tested and measured them, actually 2 of them weren't working at all. They weren't bringing any leads or activities in. So we could switch those off straight away. So we got more effective marketing in place. We then had a sales resource. We had a bit more money floating around. The cash flow was a bit better. And it looks like we'll treble that business within 12 months is
Wow.
the plan for them. So some huge changes to those guys who also had some requirements, not only in terms of the business and what they wanted to do with the business itself, but their own personal wealth situation of the profits that come out of the business need to go into some investments they needed, and that's another big area that we work in. Of it's great to coach a business to make it successful. Actually, we want to coach the owners and then give them some awareness of what you can do with the money that you're making to set yourself up well for, you know, your family, for your future, and all those sorts of things. So there were some real success stories out of that.
It sounds amazing. Like you said, it's kind of having someone who's going to take the time to go through the data and actually break it down and understand it. I think this is, again, it's that thing of sometimes you don't want to go through the figures because you're a bit insecure, or you're too busy, or you'd rather be doing something else. And as you say, like to save 70 grand completely, you know, immediately, I mean, it's fantastic. It's such a good investment. It's such a good return on your services, because obviously what they're spending with you versus what they're saving, immediately you go, wow, this is amazing. So
yeah, I will work with businesses where, and well, I don't turn anyone away, but my goal is to have me paid for, you know, within a couple of months. We will find the savings, we will find the value, increase the business to a level where, you know, I shouldn't be a cost. I should be there as a pure value adder. So, and I mean, another thing we do is for the more mature businesses, we do a board of directors program where, you know, any publicly listed company, you know, has to have a board of directors. That's not required for privately owned, but there's huge value there of, you know, we bring our businesses into a room, there'll be 6 businesses, and you'll present your business for 2 hours to your board, and that's, you know, another 5-6 business owners. And they'll all give you guidance and support and help on the things, you know, the areas that you can do. And then once you've finished presenting, you move around the table and someone else sits, and then you're a board member and you're advising, you know, that business. So there's you know, huge amounts of value in having a third party looking at your business. And with any board, it's usually a mix. You know, if you have an oil and gas company, your board doesn't want to be all oil and gas people because that's just what they know. You need someone from another industry, another experience to come in and give different views and outlooks on things that can be done. So by having someone who, I'll understand the number of industries, I won't be as expert as the owner in what they do. But that's you know, one of the values of having a fresh set of eyes look at something, and I'll coach to the ideas that are needed. But then if I need to go to that business and say, look, you really need to go and work on something detailed marketing or detailed financial or brand awareness and recognition, I've got a network of people I can tap into and introduce to. So it's also that community approach to how we can support these businesses that we work with. So
no, it sounds great. I mean, I guess if someone was watching this interview and they're thinking, I want to start a business, and maybe I haven't researched the target market and the audience yet, but I kind of think I might have to do that first. What's your best piece of advice to them if they're just starting out? Obviously, contact you, but beyond that, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, those things, right? You will be passionate about the business you're about to start. So there may be some bias there in your mind as to that total available market, who else is doing it, how will you do things differently to the people that are doing it? Where do you actually want to get that business to, let's say in that first year, come up with a 12-month plan, break that down into a load of quarterly activity. And because the cash thing is so important, you know, have a cash flow forecast and budget. So understand what are the things that you will do, at what point, and what money do you expect, so that you're not struggling, and get all of the upfront, you know, talk to somebody who understands, you know, contracts and various things to make sure that, depending on the nature of the business you're in, I mean, if you're in retail, if you're in food and beverage, if you're in some product or services supply business, depending on what that is, but get some good advice on the agreements to protect yourself, to make sure there's no surprises there. But yeah, I think they're some of the main things. But cash is a big one to focus on. The vast majority of businesses that then fail within the first couple of years, it's purely down to cash flow.
Interesting. Yeah, that it's I've definitely heard that a lot. So like I say, knowing that is already good, going in looking for that. And I guess finally, so if someone, you know, from your point of view, who's the ideal person who you would like to join Entrepreneur Business School, and what would you recommend? So as far as, like, you know, someone's watching this video, they're going, look, I'd love to work with Steven. Who's your ideal customer, and how does the program help them sort of move forward, whether it's starting a business or just enhancing one they've already been running?
Yeah, it's anybody who they know they need help, you know, and the business isn't, they don't have to have a problem right now, but they can be aware that there's some challenges, that the business isn't growing, the way they like. They haven't got enough money. It's one thing to look at the profit that your business is producing. The number in your bank account is a very different number usually from the profit number. So, if there's a challenge there around profitability and cash flow, if you're just too damn busy in terms of you're someone who's we have a thing called a cash flow ladder, where if you're a business manager, that's where you have people, but the business cannot run without you. And we want to get you to business owner category, which is where you have people and the business will run without you. It doesn't mean you can disappear for 6 months, but the business can fundamentally run without you. So people who are time poor, where just need another set of eyes and know the business is great, but it's not quite where it needs to be. If they want to move into another market segment or do something, then the coaching's pretty valuable for those and business owners who might want to be looking at selling up. I mean, there may be someone who in the next couple of years think, I want to extract myself and sell the business to somebody. There's a lot of work you can do there to structure the business. We can help with that to maximize the multiplier you would get. So obviously when you sell a business, it's kind of your profitability, and then there's a multiplier, and we've worked with businesses where that multiplier was maybe 5, and by restructuring over time and taking a little bit more time to sell, we've got that up to 20. So
Wow.
Huge difference in terms of the saleability of a business. So if someone's looking at that, we help as well.
It sounds phenomenal. I'd have to say, so if people want to, to find you and take a look at what you offer, where's the best place for them to go?
The ebs.org is the company website, or it's Steven with a PH at ebs.org is my email. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so if you search Steven Reeve Entrepreneurial Business School, I'll show up. So that's the way to find me.
Amazing. Well, Steven, thank you very much. I'm very aware of how much cash is king, and I will keep an eye on my cash flow and just say thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next BNI meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.